A white feathered bird cut through the clouds, wings beating steadily as the landscape shifted below. Landscapes changed like drifting white dogs, mountains rolling past in an endless blur. The bird's sharp eyes scanned the earth before it suddenly dove, snatching a small fish from a stream with effortless grace. It took flight again, weaving through dense forests, blooming wildflowers, and the whistling wind until a humble village appeared. The bird landed on an ancient willow tree at the northern edge of the settlement. As it preened its feathers, it looked down at the crowd of villagers kneeling before a dilapidated earth temple. The people of Li family village offer their respect, the village chief, Li Deyong, announced as he bowed with deep devotion. We pray for Lord Zhongyu to grant us favorable weather and a bountiful harvest in the coming year. The people of Li family village offer their respect, a dozen elderly men behind him echoed, their voices trembling but sincere. We pray for Lord Zhongyu to protect our sons from demons and evil spirits. The people of Li family village offer their respect. The younger men, women, and children followed, their voices rising in a unified chorus. We pray for Lord Zhongyu to grant us peace in all things. Light the incense, the chief shouted. Everyone lit 3 sticks of incense. Bow again to Lord Zhongyu. As they bowed, wisps of blue smoke rose, swirling around the small temple until it looked like a divine palace hidden in the clouds. It gave the impression that a mighty deity was sitting high above the 9 heavens, feasting on their offerings. Lord Zhongyu, please accept our offerings, the chief called out during the 3rd bow. 3 bows to Lord Zhongyu. I stared at the scene, completely stunned. I looked at the sea of poorly dressed villagers kneeling before me, then looked down at my own body. It was semi-transparent. I realized I was inside the earth god statue itself, confined to a cramped space barely 10 feet wide. The statue felt like a cage I couldn't escape. I had traveled to another world. Not only that, I had become an earth god statue. What kind of nightmare was this? I closed my eyes, and a flood of information rushed into my mind. 30 billion people from Earth had been transported here to become wild gods. We were divided into 30,000 regions, with 100,000 wild gods in each. A divine interface appeared in my mind, showing tabs for personal info, tasks, regional chat, trading, and divine warfare. The goal was to develop our influence, rise through the divine ranks, and eventually compete for the ultimate throne of heaven and earth. 30 billion people turned into wild gods. We weren't even official earth gods yet, just wild ones. My mouth twitched. The scale of this world was terrifying. Was it large enough to hold 30 billion gods? No, the information mentioned countless worlds. We were likely scattered across different realms. I pulled up my personal information. Name, Li Yu. Divine name, Lord Zhongyu. Rank, Wild God. Requirement for promotion to lower 9th grade Earth God, 100 points of divine power. Current rank, unranked. Divine power, 2 points. Incense faith, 765 points. 1,000 points of faith condense into 1 point of divine power. Divine skills, Dream Walk, Golden Blade, a point Ghost Soldier, a point Temple Pillar. Each costs 1 point of divine power. I felt like I could perform these skills with just a thought. Dream Walk required a sleeping target, a point Ghost Soldier needed a soul, and a point Temple Pillar had specific conditions. Only Golden Blade could be used freely. I was curious about its power, but with only 2 points of divine power, I didn't dare waste them. This was my lifeline. To become an official Earth God, I needed 100 points of divine power. That meant accumulating 100,000 points of incense faith. It wasn't going to be easy. For a deity, faith was everything. With it, you were a god. Without it, you were just a hunk of clay. No wonder the legends always talked about gods fighting over incense. I shifted my focus to my believer info to see where my faith was coming from. Daily incense, 124 points. Believer tiers, Dao grade, 0, Heaven grade, 0, Saint grade, 0, Grade A, 0. Grade B, 5, 10 points each daily. Grade C, 65, 1 point each daily. Grade D, 91, 1 point every 10 days. I frowned. Most of my followers were Grade D. The quality of their faith was terrible. I looked out at the crowd. They looked so pious, but apparently, most of them were just going through the motions. My gaze landed on the offering table. Among the standard meat offerings was an item glowing with a faint white light. This was the true offering for the biannual grand sacrifice. As a deity, I could claim one offering during this ritual. The rules of the divine path would naturally enhance that item by 20%. Plus, a grand sacrifice granted 10 days' worth of incense faith all at once. There was a catch, though. The offering couldn't have any direct karmic connection to the deity. It had to be something the believers obtained entirely on their own. I reached out my hand. The glowing item floated off the table and flew into my 10-foot divine domain. A notification flashed. Your believers have completed a grand sacrifice. They have offered a grade 1 body strengthening grass. You have received 1,240 points of incense faith. Then, another message appeared that made my heart stop. Divine path rules in effect. Your offering, the grade 1 body strengthening grass, has received a 100-fold increase. You have received a grade 4 dragon blood flame grass. I froze. A 100-fold increase? What happened to the 20%? I stared at the screen, my mind spinning. The information in my head clearly stated that offerings were boosted by 1.2 times. A 100-fold boost was impossible. If I still had a physical body, I knew my heart would be pounding against my ribs. Shaking, I immediately opened the regional chat. The chat interface was a blur of messages, scrolling faster than I could read. Holy crap! My believers gave me a rank 1 Firefox carcass. That 20% boost is no joke. The thing grew an entire size. I got a 10-year bone-strengthening flower. It turned into a 12-year one. Freshly made high-grade blood pills here. Boosted by 20%. Selling for just 3 units of divine power. I skimmed through the chaos. Everyone was adapting so fast. Some people were already begging for divine power, promising to repay the favor once they gained a physical body. Others were looking for CP partners to survive the cold together. One person was panicking because a dog demon was lurking outside their village. Then one message caught my eye. I'm going numb, guys. My believers are a bunch of bandits. Their offering to me was a kidnapped wife. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It was confirmed. Everyone else was getting a 20% boost. Only I had the 100-fold increase. The difference was staggering. A 20% boost just made a rank 1 item a bit better. My 100-fold boost had transformed a rank 1 weed into a rank 4 treasure. In this massive, forced migration of souls, I clearly had a golden finger. I opened the regional trade interface. It allowed us to trade with each other or sell items to the divine shop. The shop didn't pay well, but it acted as a perfect price guide. Based on the chat, a standard rank 1 item was worth about 1,000 points of incense faith, which equaled 1 unit of divine power. A boosted rank 1 item went for about 1,500 points. But what about my rank 4 dragon blood flame grass? The plant floated in my divine domain, radiating a scorching red glow. I could see a tiny, dragon-shaped spirit swirling around the stem. It looked leagues beyond the shriveled grass that had been on the table moments ago. I grabbed the grass and listed it in the divine shop to check the price. Name, Dragon Blood Flame Grass. Rank, 4. Effect, gives a rank 3 human warrior a 50% chance to break through to rank 4. Price, 360 units of divine power. 360 units? My heart soared. That was equivalent to 8 years of steady income from my current believers. More importantly, it was enough to promote my godhood from unranked to lower 9th grade. I wouldn't be a rogue spirit anymore. I would be an official earth god. While others were scratching and clawing for a single unit of divine power, I had just stumbled into a fortune. It felt like I was playing a video game with a cheat code. I couldn't stop grinning. I didn't hesitate. I sold the grass immediately. I didn't need it. My strongest believers were only rank 1 warriors. A rank 4 treasure would be wasted on them. The moment the sale finished, I felt a surge of energy. 360 units of divine power flooded my being. I felt invincible. I even had the urge to test out my golden blade technique again, but I forced myself to stay calm. Wasting power just to show off was a rookie mistake. I pushed the excitement down and funneled 100 units of divine power into my promotion. Outside the temple, the villagers were slowly standing up. The grand sacrifice was a tradition they performed twice a year, even if Zhangyu, the god I now inhabited, had never actually done anything for them. For most, it was just a way to find peace of mind. But for the 5 elders leading the rite, it was serious business. Where is it? Where did the body-strengthening grass go? Li Yuming, a hunched man in his 50s, was cleaning the table. He reached for the most valuable item the village owned, but his hand hit empty wood. He froze. The grass? Where did that big stalk of grass go? The other elders rushed over, their faces pale with worry. That rank 1 spirit herb was worth 90 silver taels, the village's entire life savings. They scrambled around, flipping over baskets and checking under the table. I saw it right there before the 3rd bough. The village head, Li Diang, muttered with a frown. How could it just vanish? The villagers fanned out, searching every corner of the temple grounds. Maybe a bird snatched it while we were bowing, someone suggested. Li Diang shook his head. No, this is a temple. No bird would dare steal from the earth god's table. Then, a small girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, spoke up in a timid voice. Maybe Lord Zhangyu accepted the offering? Silence fell over the crowd. Everyone stared at the stone statue inside the temple. Boom! A sudden clap of thunder exploded in the clear blue sky. There wasn't a cloud in sight, yet the sound was deafening, like a proclamation from the heavens. The villagers jumped, trembling as they looked at the sky. Could it really be? Li Yuming whispered. He was one of the village's 2 warriors. Even in his old age, he could still crush a stone with his bare hands, and he had guarded that herb for 7 years without a single issue. It has to be. Lord Zhangyu has finally accepted our gift. I knew it, another elder cried, his eyes filling with tears of devotion. Our earth god is alive. Remember when Pai Ho's wife couldn't conceive? He prayed here, and a year later, they had a son. The villagers searched one last time, but they found nothing. Finally, Li Diang let out a long, shaky breath. Uncle Yuming, it seems Lord Zhangyu really has graced us today. Li Diang was the village head. Aside from Li Yuming, he was the only other body-tempering warrior in our village, but he didn't actually believe in the earth god. To him, if gods really existed, the world wouldn't be overrun by demons and evil spirits. He only organized these grand ceremonies to keep the villagers at ease. It made managing them a lot easier. He even secretly suspected that Li Yuming had hidden the herb himself. Of course, he kept those thoughts to himself. Accusing an elder without proof would ruin the village's unity. Lord Zhangyu has manifested. He accepted our offering. Li Yuming cried out, falling to his knees again in a piteous display of devotion. Please, protect our young men from the demons. Keep the evil spirits away. The other elders followed suit, bowing deeply. Watching Li Yuming's absolute sincerity, even Li Dayang started to waver. Was it possible? Had the god really appeared? He quickly shook the thought away. No, it was impossible. In this world, there were no miracles. Only martial arts offered a way to survive. Meanwhile, I was looking at a floating display of my own status. Name * Li Yu Divine Name * Zhangyu Gong Title * Earth God of Li Family Village Rank * Lower 9th Grade 1000 Divine Power needed to promote. Divine Power * 262 Incense * 2005 Divine Arts * Dream Walk 1. Golden Blade 1. Crimson Peak Underworld Soldiers 1. Crimson Peak Oracle 10. Disease Dispelling 5. Flight 10. Underworld Artifact 10. Earth Shield 10. Strengthen Underworld Soldiers 10. Cloud Mist 10. Heavenly Thunder 10. I felt a surge of strength coursing through me. Even a simple Golden Blade technique would be 10 times stronger now than it was when I was just a wandering spirit. A smile touched my lips. I wasn't just a translucent ghost anymore. I wore formal divine robes and a crown. In my left hand, I held the divine seal. In my right, the land registry. I had finally secured a permanent position in the celestial bureaucracy. I guess no matter what world you're in, the end goal is always a stable job. With a wave of my hand, I summoned the 2,000 units of incense from the corner of my domain. They swirled into my divine seal, which instantly purified all the impurities. 2 streaks of pure white divine power flew out and merged into my body, bringing my total to 264. Having the seal made a huge difference. Without it, refining that much incense would have taken me 4 hours. Now, it happened in a heartbeat. Satisfied, I opened my quest interface. I was curious to see what the mastermind behind our transmigration wanted us to do. Quest 1, the first oracle. Description: as a god, you need a spokesperson to spread your faith. Objective: recruit a mortal to voluntarily become your oracle. Reward: 2 first-tier blessing talismans, 2 divine power. I raised an eyebrow. To complete this, I'd clearly need to use my dream walk technique. I understood the logic. A god shouldn't just pop up in front of people. If you lose your mystery and majesty, people stop fearing and respecting you. To be a god, you have to remain high above, distant, and imposing. The reward caught my eye too. I didn't care much about the 2 points of divine power, but the blessing talismans were valuable. They weren't for me. They were for my followers. 1 talisman could turn an ordinary mortal into a first-tier body-tempering warrior instantly. In a world full of demons, a strong oracle was essential for survival and for bringing back better offerings. So who should I pick? I opened the land registry. It contained the life stories of every villager, every good deed, every sin, everything. It even functioned like a minor book of life and death. If I crossed a name out, that person would die instantly, and I wouldn't face any divine punishment or cost for doing it. That was my right as the Earth God. I scanned the records, and my eyes settled on Liu Ming. He was perfect. He was smart, had spent 3 years in school, and had traveled the outside world for 12 years before returning. He was respected, had a solid foundation in martial arts, and most importantly, his heart was in the right place. He hadn't committed any atrocities. "He'll do," I whispered. It was past the hour of the ox. My promotion had taken some time, and the village was now draped in a heavy, silent darkness. The small mud houses were scattered among the mountains, some with patches of melting snow still clinging to the fields. I took a step and physically walked out of my statue. When I was a wild god, my domain felt like a cage I couldn't leave. Now, I could feel the solid ground beneath my feet. I walked toward the edge of the village, but after about half a mile, I stopped. A strange, hollow feeling washed over me. I realized that if I stepped past this boundary, I would become incredibly weak. My rank would drop, and my spells would cost 10 times more power. Unless it was an emergency, I wasn't leaving my jurisdiction. I turned back and vanished, reappearing inside my divine realm. My gaze shifted toward Liu Ming's house. He was fast asleep. I reached out my hand and pointed a finger toward his direction. A single spark of divine power gathered at my fingertip, ready to enter his dreams. I performed the dream-walking technique. In an instant, Liu Ming found himself standing in front of my shrine, his expression blank and confused. He didn't understand why he was dreaming of the Earth God Temple. Was it because of the grand sacrifice earlier that day? Did the Earth God really consume that precious ginseng grass? He was still skeptical. Even though he was a devout believer, he was an educated man who had seen the outside world. He knew how things worked. He worshipped me because he craved hope. He wanted a miracle to descend, to drive away the demons and let people live in peace. But whether miracles actually existed, he didn't know. Liu Ming. I let my voice ring out, high and mighty, filled with an endless, crushing majesty. Liu Ming spun around, looking everywhere at once. "Who's calling me?" he shouted. He suddenly realized how vivid this dream was. It felt terrifyingly real, yet he knew he was asleep. It was a strange, jarring sensation. "Liu Ming," I spoke again. My voice seemed to fall from the very heavens. He gasped and looked up at the sky above the temple. A massive, indifferent face had materialized there, covering half the horizon. My eyes looked down at him with absolute authority. I looked exactly like the statue of the Earth God in the shrine. "Lord Earth God," Liu Ming cried out. He collapsed to his knees, his body trembling with excitement. He couldn't believe it. After all these years, the Earth God had finally manifested. "I am the rightful Earth God of Li Family Village." My voice boomed, echoing through the dream world like a physical force. "I shall protect this place. But gods and mortals are different. I cannot speak to the masses directly. Are you willing to become my temple master?" Will you walk the earth as my representative? The power in my voice was overwhelming. It was the weight of a true deity. I am willing. This servant is willing, Li Yuming shouted, hitting his head against the ground in a frantic kowtow. Tomorrow at dawn, come to my shrine and bow. You shall become the temple master. Do not forget. As my voice faded, the dream world shattered into 1,000 pieces. Li Yuming's eyes snapped open. He bolted upright in bed, my final words still ringing in his ears. Do not forget. The earth god appeared, he whispered to himself. He gave me a dream. The memory was too sharp, too clear. It didn't feel like a dream at all. It felt like a lived experience. That giant face, those eyes, that voice, it was all real. What's wrong? His wife, Zhao Jiahua, muttered. She opened her sleepy eyes and frowned. The rooster hasn't even crowed yet. Why are you sitting up? Jiahua, the earth god just spoke to me in a dream. Li Yuming's voice shook with an intensity only he could understand. What? A dream? She rolled over, unimpressed. Go back to sleep. Maybe you'll dream about the city god next. If you don't believe me, fine. Li Yuming snapped, his voice trembling even harder. But he told me I'm the temple master now. I represent him in the world of men. He was practically vibrating with excitement. To represent a true god was a status beyond anything he had ever imagined. Just sleep, Zhao Jiahua said impatiently. If you keep sleeping, you can dream you're the earth god yourself. She didn't believe in gods. If they were real, why did their third son die of sickness years ago? They had prayed then, but it hadn't changed a thing. Ignorant woman, Li Yuming huffed. He didn't bother arguing. He jumped out of bed and started putting on his clothes. He had to prepare. As soon as the sun touched the horizon, he was going to that shrine. He even planned to build a small shed outside the temple to serve as his office. Less than an hour later, as the sky turned a pale gray, Li Yuming grabbed his tools. He woke up his two sons and marched them toward the temple. Uncle Yuming, what are you doing? Li Diang, the village chief, stopped them. He looked at the tools and the ladder the sons were carrying with a look of pure confusion. Diang, let me tell you, Li Yuming said, his chest puffed out with pride. The earth god gave me a dream last night. I'm the new temple master. Don't be too jealous now. The village chief stared at him like he had lost his mind. A dream? A representative? He watched Li Yuming walk away, convinced the old man had finally snapped. Soon, they reached the shrine at the north end of the village, right next to the ancient weeping willow tree. Dashing, Dimming, get that shed up quickly. Li Yuming barked, gesturing grandly. Dad, are you serious about this? His eldest son, Dushing, asked with a long face. Dushing was a head taller than his father, built like a tank, but he lacked any talent for martial arts. At 28, he was still stuck at the bottom of the ladder. You think I'm joking? Li Yuming glared at him, standing straighter than he had in years. I am the earth god's representative now. The two brothers shared a look of pure exhaustion. They didn't believe a word of it, but they feared their father too much to argue. They started building the shed out of scrap wood and timber. By now, the village elders had heard the news and started hobbling over. Yuming, is it true? Li Yutang asked, leaning heavily on his cane. He was the oldest man in the village. Did the earth god really speak to you? Is it real? Are you really the temple master? Another elder chimed in. Does this mean he really did eat that ginseng grass yesterday? Li Yuming stood tall in front of his old friends. You all know what kind of man I am. The earth god chose me. From now on, don't call me Yuming. Call me temple master. A little further back, the village chief, Li Diang, watched with a grimace. Li Yuming didn't look like he was acting, but the chief still didn't buy it. He figured the old man had just had a very vivid dream. Or worse, maybe Li Yuming had stolen the ginseng himself and was putting on this show to cover his tracks. He narrowed his eyes, watching the sons work, waiting for the truth to come out. The two brothers, Dushing and his sibling, were built strong, but they lacked the talent for martial arts. They hadn't even reached the first stage of physical refinement. The village chief, Li Diang, watched them work with a cynical eye. He suspected my father, Li Yuming, had stolen the strengthening grass to help one of his sons finally become a true warrior and was now using this earth god story as a cover. All right, my old friends, I said, my voice turning solemn as I checked the position of the sun. It's almost dawn. I must pay my respects to Lord Zhongyu and officially become the temple master. Everyone, please be quiet. Because of my father's high standing in the village, the chatter died down instantly. The elders stepped back, their eyes glued to him. A crowd of curious villagers had gathered further back, whispering among themselves. A temple master? Li family village had never had one before. This was unheard of. I knelt before the humble earth god temple, my face a mask of absolute gravity. I performed the full ritual, 3 prostrations and 9 kowtows. Li Yuming, messenger of the Li family village, pays homage to Lord Zhongyu. I shouted, my voice ringing with a piety that made the air feel heavy. I am willing to serve as your temple master and walk the earth in your name. The villagers held their breath. The silence was so thick you could hear a leaf hit the ground. High above, within the divine realm, I looked down at the old man. I reached out my right hand. 10 units of divine power surged together, weaving into a brilliant, glowing mandate covered in complex, ancient runes. This was the temple master's mandate. I pressed the earth god's seal onto it, turning the white glow into a royal purple. From this day forward, I declared, my voice echoing like thunder from the heavens, Li Yuming is my temple master. He shall walk the earth in my stead. The purple light shot out from the divine realm, streaking into the temple and merging directly into my father's body. The villagers gasped. They didn't just hear the voice. They felt the raw majesty of a higher power looking down from the sky. Then, the miracle happened. Before their eyes, my father's thinning white hair turned jet black. His hunched back straightened until he stood tall and firm. The deep wrinkles on his face smoothed out, and the cloudiness in his eyes vanished, replaced by a sharp, clear light. A faint scent of incense began to drift from his skin. In a single heartbeat, he looked 20 years younger. The crowd was paralyzed with shock. Lord Zhongyu has appeared, an elder cried out, his voice trembling. He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He really did speak to Yuming. It wasn't a dream. One by one, the villagers collapsed into bows. Their skepticism was gone, replaced by a wave of fervent faith. Even the village chief, Li Diyang, felt a shiver run down his spine. He scrambled to his knees, his mind racing. The god was real. Their village was truly protected. I watched the faith points climb. This was why a god must occasionally show their hand. I had gone from 5 loyal followers to 16 in an instant, and dozens more were on the verge of total devotion. By granting my father this mandate, I had boosted his strength significantly. Before, he was a weak martial artist who had only refined his blood twice. Now, he possessed the power of a mid-tier second-rank warrior. He was stronger now than he had ever been in his youth. I checked my system and claimed my reward for the mission, 2 units of divine power and 2 first-rank blessing charms. I looked at the shimmering charms, wondering who to bestow them upon next. Back at the temple, my father was staring at his own hands in disbelief. He felt 10 times stronger than his prime. It wasn't just physical strength either. He felt a strange, ethereal energy flowing through his veins. Not the typical internal energy of a martial artist, but something divine. 5 distinct powers flooded his mind. He now knew the small golden blade technique for offense, the cloud shield for protection, and the earth walking technique for travel. He could even create medicinal water to cure sickness or use the god-summoning art to banish evil spirits. Li Yuming thanks Lord Zhongyu for his grace, my father cried, his voice shaking with emotion. I will give everything to walk this earth in your name. He wasn't just an old man with a title anymore. He was a guardian with the power to change everything. My father, Li Yuming, was no longer just a frail old man. He had become a second-rank, true Qi martial artist. In a place like our local county seat, a man with that kind of power held a position of real respect. In a single heartbeat, he had leaped from a declining, first-rank body refiner to a powerhouse. The news spread like wildfire. Villagers rushed from every corner of the settlement, their eyes wide as they listened to the frantic explanations of those who had witnessed the miracle. When they saw the physical transformation in my father, they didn't hesitate. They hit the ground, kneeling in the dirt. Lord Zhongyu has manifested, they cried. The earth god of our village is real. Incense sticks were pulled from pockets and lit in a hurry. The air around my small temple grew thick with fragrant smoke as they bowed, their heads hitting the ground. Their prayers flooded my ears. One woman prayed for her family's safety in the city, promising daily incense. Another begged for health and a life free of pain. One man, clearly desperate, asked for wealth, praying to literally find money on the ground. Then there was a 32-year-old bachelor, pleading for a beautiful, virtuous wife. Before today, most of their worship had been a hollow formality. No one had ever actually seen a god do anything. But now they saw the power with their own eyes. Everyone wanted a piece of that divine protection. I watched the village chief, Li Diang. His pupils contracted as he stared at my father. While the others were just shocked by the physical change, Li Diang was a martial artist himself. He could feel the terrifying aura radiating off my father. It felt just like the powerful masters he had met in the county seat. He realized the truth instantly. My father had become the temple master, and in exchange, I had granted him power that defied logic. Li Diang's heart hammered against his ribs. He was envious, but more than that, he was enlightened. Why spend decades struggling with martial arts training when one moment of devotion could change everything? Faith in Lord Zhongyu is the only path, he whispered to himself. He prostrated himself, more sincere than he had ever been in his life. He was a man who desperately wanted to rise in the world. Inside my divine realm, I felt a sudden surge. 2 of my followers had just reached grade A status. This was huge. A single grade A believer provided as much faith as 10 grade B followers. In just 10 days, 1 grade A follower could generate enough energy to condense a full unit of divine power. They were the most precious assets a god could have. Reaching grade A wasn't just about being pious. It required a deep, soul-level identification with the god and a heart full of genuine awe. My father hitting grade A was expected. I had literally rebuilt his body. But the second one surprised me. It was the village chief. He had jumped straight from grade D to grade A. I checked his life records in the divine ledger and listened to his inner plea. He had a strong heart for martial arts, but his talent was mediocre at best. At 35, he was stuck at the first rank with no hope of progressing. He was a fair man, no great sins, no great virtues. Since he offered such pure faith, I decided to answer him. I had 2 first-rank blessing charms in my inventory. These charms were incredible. They could turn an ordinary person into a mid-tier first-rank martial artist instantly. Or, if the person was already a martial artist, it could boost them by 2 minor stages. I looked at my list of followers. I had 27 grade B believers now. Most were elderly, but 2 stood out, Li Xiuwu and Li Deming. Li Deming was my father's second son. I decided against giving it to him for now. I didn't want to shower one family with too much grace all at once. I chose Li Xiuwu instead. I thought about buying more charms. As a transmigrator, I had access to a regional trading interface with 100,000 other gods. It was only the second day, but many had likely completed their initial tasks and were looking to sell their rewards for raw divine power. I opened the trade menu and saw exactly what I expected. Plenty of blessing charms were for sale. While I valued the strength of my followers, many other players preferred the liquid currency of divine power to upgrade themselves. Some sellers were absolute crooks, asking for 5 units of divine power for a single charm. Most were asking for 4, but I spotted 7 charms listed for 3 units each. I didn't hesitate. I spent 21 units of divine power and snapped them all up. Suddenly, 9 glowing white charms floated before me in the divine realm. I turned my gaze back to the village. It was time to expand my influence. Aside from the elderly, there were 10 middle-aged men in the village, all between 30 and 40 years old. I looked at my list again. I had previously hesitated to grant power to Li Deming, my host father's second son, but I changed my mind. Why hold back? If I showered one family with grace, their devotion would only burn brighter. Besides, I had 7 extra blessing charms now. I didn't need to be stingy. I added Li Deming to the list. Then, I selected 6 more from the remaining middle-aged men. I wasn't worried about running out of charms. They were easy enough to buy on the trading interface, and I had a feeling they wouldn't be hard to earn as rewards later. Each first-rank blessing charm contained 6 different martial arts. I had to choose one to bestow upon my new messengers. I scrolled through the options and settled on the split blade technique. It was fast, explosive, and far more lethal than the raging palm style Li Yuming had received. Go, I whispered, flicking my fingers. 9 glowing white charms shot out from my divine realm. Down at the Earth God Temple, the villagers were finishing their prayers. Most were preparing to leave. Life in the village was hard, and even a miracle couldn't stop the need to work the fields. But before they could step away, 9 streaks of white light erupted from my statue. The light slammed into 9 people who were still kneeling in deep prayer. One of them was the village chief, Li Diyang. The moment the charm entered his body, Li Diyang gasped. He felt a surge of heat as the white light dissolved into his blood. He was already a first-rank martial artist who had completed 2 blood-refining cycles. In a heartbeat, the charm pushed him through 2 more cycles. He surged from a mid-tier warrior to the absolute peak of the first rank. He was now just 1 step away from becoming a second-rank true Chi master. The other 8, including Li Deming, felt an even more violent transformation. They went from ordinary mortals to mid-tier first-rank warriors instantly. Their muscles tightened, and their blood boiled with newfound power. Knowledge flooded their minds. It was as if they had spent years practicing the split blade technique, mastering every strike and stance in a single breath. Just like that, Li Family Village gained 8 new warriors and 1 peak-level powerhouse. Thank you, Lord Zhongyu, for your grace. Li Diyang cried out. He hit the ground, prostrating himself with such force his forehead thudded against the dirt. Tears streamed down his face. As the village chief, he carried a crushing weight on his shoulders. This world was crawling with demons and spirits. Every few months, when he traveled to the county seat, he heard horror stories. One village wiped out overnight. Another swallowed whole by a monster. He was 35, and his strength had started to decline. He had lived in constant fear that he wouldn't be strong enough to protect his people when the darkness finally came for them. But now, I had given him the power he craved. Thank you, Lord Zhongyu, Li Deming shouted, his voice cracking with emotion. He was 25 and had been trained by his father for years, yet he had never managed to trigger a single blood transformation. He had given up hope of ever being a warrior. Now he was a mid-tier powerhouse. The other 7 were just as shaken. Li Xiaowu, a young man who had been orphaned at 7, wept openly. He had grown up on the charity of the village, always feeling like a burden, always full of self-doubt. Now, he stood tall, possessing the same strength the village elders once had. Li Yuming watched this with wide eyes. He was thrilled. The strength of the village had shifted overnight. But he was also observant. He noticed that the 9 people who received the blessing were the ones who hadn't gotten up to leave. They were the ones who had stayed on their knees, praying the longest. Do you see now, you idiots? Li Yuming barked at the lingering crowd. He stepped forward and slapped a confused villager upside the head. They got the blessing because they were the most devout. You all were ready to go home and eat, but they stayed here to honor the Lord. There is a God 3 feet above your head watching everything you do. He pointed a finger at the crowd, his voice booming. If you want the Lord's grace, look at yourselves first. Are you faithful enough? From now on, every house offers incense morning and night. If I catch anyone slacking, I'll break their legs myself. The villagers stood in stunned silence. Regret washed over them. Why hadn't they stayed longer? Why hadn't they prayed harder? They made silent vows right then, and there to be the most devoted followers I had ever seen. Inside my divine realm, I smiled. Li Yuming was perfect for the job. He had traveled the world and knew how to handle people. With him leading the temple, the faith of the 215 souls currently in the village would only grow stronger. My influence was just beginning to spread. I pulled my consciousness back from the village square and focused on the data within my divine realm. The numbers were shifting rapidly. Before the miracle, at least 50 people in the village weren't even considered grade D believers. Most were children under 5, whose minds were too simple to generate real faith, so I ignored them for now. But things had changed. I opened the believer information interface to see the new tallies. My daily incense count had jumped to 531 units. I scanned the ranks, grade S, grade A, grade B. The numbers were climbing. I now had 2 grade A believers providing 100 units of incense each, 26 grade B followers, and 102 at grade C. Even the 50 skeptics at grade D were starting to contribute. My total follower count had reached 180 people. A massive wave of them had promoted to grade C after witnessing the miracle. The news hadn't even spread to the entire village yet, and many people were still at home. In a few days, these numbers would skyrocket. I felt a surge of satisfaction. A well-timed miracle was truly the best way to harvest devotion. In just those few minutes of reflection, for more people promoted to grade A, I stopped watching the crowd and checked my personal tasks. Task 1 was complete, and a new one had refreshed. I took these tasks seriously. The rewards, like the blessing charms, were essential for boosting the strength of my followers. Task 2 appeared before my eyes. You already have a temple master. Now, let him develop more believers for you. Objective: reach a total of 300 believers. Reward: 1 mountain leveling talisman and 5 units of divine power. I frowned. Lee Family Village only had 223 people, including 8 who were away working and 18 children under 5. Even if I converted every single person currently in the village, I'd only have 197 believers. I was more than 100 short. I'll have to expand into the surrounding villages, I whispered to myself. But there was a risk. I didn't know if any of the other 3 billion wild gods who crossed over from Earth were nearby. If another god was operating in the neighboring territory, we couldn't coexist. Faith was a zero-sum game. To grow, I would eventually have to take what was theirs. I finally understood why the ancient myths were full of god wars. Faith was a god's most precious property. If you didn't snatch it from others, they would eventually come to snatch it from you. I decided to have Li Yuming send scouts out. If any nearby villages reported miracles, I'd know I had competition. I wasn't too worried, though. My 100-fold tribute amplification had already given me 360 units of divine power. Most other Earthlings were likely still stuck as unranked wild gods. I had already ascended to the rank 9 position of Earth God. In the world of divinity, a single rank higher was enough to crush an opponent. I tried opening the Divine Warfare interface. Yesterday, it was locked because I was unranked, but now it flickered to life. The requirements were steep. You had to be at least rank 9 and have been a god for a year. It also cost 100 units of divine power just to initiate. The rules of Divine Warfare were brutal. It was a 3-part conflict. First, a battle of messengers, the chosen champions. If you lost, your divine strength dropped by 30%. Second, a battle of subgods or ghost soldiers. A loss there cost you 20% of your power. Finally, the gods themselves fought until one was dead. The winner took everything. All surviving believers, 5 times the divine power spent to start the war, and rare items like law shards. My heart skipped a beat as I read the details. This system was designed to encourage us to slaughter each other. The rewards were too rich to ignore. If I won just one war, I'd finish my believer task instantly and skyrocket in power. To get rich, you need a windfall, I muttered. For a god, Divine Warfare was that windfall. But it was incredibly dangerous. The system matched you against gods who were at least your rank, never lower. You could easily end up fighting someone much stronger than you. This made the strength of my followers and subgods a matter of life and death. I wondered if the other Earthlings who were selling their blessing charms on the market would regret it once they saw this interface. They were selling their future survival for short-term gains. I looked at my remaining 234 units of divine power. After a moment of hesitation, I spent 160 units to buy 40 grade 1 blessing charms from the regional market. Once other gods reached rank 9 and saw the Divine Warfare screen, the price of these charms would explode. They would become priceless. I was down to 74 units of divine power, which was enough for now. A single divine spell only cost 10 units. Besides, no one could start a war for a year, and we were only on day 2. My focus shifted to this sub-god requirement. I didn't have any. The interface mentioned ghost soldiers. I realized that if a believer whose name was recorded in my Earth God registry died, I could use a spell to appoint their soul as a ghost soldier. These soldiers could leave my territory and fight for me without losing strength. Slowly, I told myself, within a year, I would have my army. And if the village didn't provide enough souls naturally, well, I had ways to speed things up. Late at night, the village was silent. Li Yuming sat cross-legged on his bed, eyes closed in deep meditation. Since I had appointed him as temple master, his mind was no longer just his own. Along with the 5 divine techniques I gave him, I had implanted a cultivation method called the breath-to-spirit law. It allowed him to refine the invisible energy within his body, growing his internal strength. He was pushing to reach the peak of the 2nd rank. He didn't waste a single second, even at night. He knew that the stronger he became, the better he could represent me, Zhang Yu, in the mortal realm. Suddenly, a heavy wave of drowsiness washed over him. His head nodded, and he collapsed onto his bed into a deep sleep. In the dream world, I manifested before him. I stood tall, my presence looming like the heavens themselves, radiating an aura of absolute authority. Li Yuming. I spoke, my voice echoing like thunder through his subconscious. As my temple master, you must spread the faith. Within 1 month, I expect to see over 300 believers registered in my name. I paused, letting the weight of the command settle. Furthermore, you must be aware of the world beyond. Go forth and scout the surrounding lands. Find the other foreign gods hiding in the shadows. Li Yuming didn't hesitate. He prostrated himself on the ground of the dreamscape, his forehead touching the floor in total devotion. I obey your divine decree, Lord Zhang Yu, he whispered. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. The atmosphere in Li family village had completely transformed. Every single household, from the oldest elders to the smallest children, visited the Earth God Temple every morning and evening. They offered incense with a fervor I hadn't seen before. It wasn't just because of the miracle they saw with Li Yuming. Over the last week, I had bestowed blessings upon 2 more villagers. The people had started to figure out my rules. They noticed that the 2 new recipients were exceptionally pious, and, more importantly, they were known for their kindness. The villagers realized that to gain my favor, they had to be good people. The village culture shifted overnight. People walked around with smiles, helping one another, and competing to be the most helpful neighbor. They didn't need Li Yuming to tell them to pray anymore. Everyone wanted to be the next one to receive a divine gift and become a powerful warrior. With the village secured, it was time to expand. Li Yuming led a small group to the neighboring Chun family village. He sat at the head of a table in their village square, looking sharp and imposing. Beside him was the village chief, Li Diyang. Standing behind them were 8 warriors, all of whom I had raised to the middle of the 1st rank. I had left 2 others back home to guard the temple. Li Yuming wouldn't tolerate anyone disrespecting my sanctuary. Are you really Li Yuming? Chen Matzi, the chief of Chun family village, asked in disbelief. Chen Matzi had grown up with Li Yuming. They used to scrap as kids. 2 months ago, Li Yuming had been a hunched-over old man with a face full of wrinkles and hair as white as snow. Now, the man sitting before him looked like he was in his prime. His skin was glowing, his eyes were sharp, and his hair was jet black. It looked like he had found the fountain of youth. The rumors about the Earth God in Li family village were spreading, but Chun Matzi couldn't wrap his head around it. Gods, in this day and age? He figured Li Yuming must have stumbled upon some rare medicinal herb in the mountains. Chun Matzi, I'm not here to waste time chatting, Li Yuming said, his voice carrying a new, natural authority. I'm here to tell you that from today forward, Chun family village is being absorbed into Li family village. You will tear down your old altars. From now on, you worship only Lord Zhang Yu. Chun Matzi stared at him, stunned. What did you just say? The Chun villagers standing around started to murmur, their faces flushing with anger. If the elders hadn't been holding the younger men back, a brawl would have broken out right then and there. Li Diyang stood up, his face expressionless. He walked slowly toward Chun Matzi. Old Chun, you're my senior, and I shouldn't have to raise a hand against you. But the temple master speaks for the god. His word is law. Forgive me. You want to fight me, Li Diyang? Chun Matzi laughed bitterly. He grabbed a heavy wooden staff from a nearby rack. You think just because I'm old I can't teach you a lesson? Come on then. He swung the staff with a roar. Chun Matzi wasn't a weakling. He was a first-rank warrior who had tempered his blood twice. He had decades of combat experience. Thwack! Li Diyang didn't even flinch. He reached out a single hand and caught the staff midair. Chun Matzi's face turned bright red as he strained, trying to pull the weapon back, but it wouldn't budge. It was like it was bolted to a mountain. Get off my dad. Shinmatsu's eldest son, Shinurgu, charged in. He was a massive, burly man and the only other trained warrior in their village. He swung his own staff with everything he had. Li Diang simply reached out his other hand and caught that one too. Let go, Li Diang said calmly. He gave a slight twist. A massive surge of power traveled down the wood. Both father and son felt their grip shatter. They stumbled back, gasping, as the skin between their thumbs and forefingers split open, dripping blood. You're at the peak of the first rank. Chun Matsi stammered, looking at Li Diang like he was seeing a ghost. How? A month ago you were barely at the middle tier. His voice trembled. He looked at the rejuvenated Li Yuming, then back at the powerhouse Li Diang. The legends were true. Li Yuming stood up. Look behind me. These 8 men are all first-rank warriors. Every one of them was blessed by Lord Zhangyu. I know you've heard the stories. I know some of you have even snuck over to our village to pray. He looked at the crowd of Qin villagers. But you are outsiders to him. If you want his real protection, if you want to be safe from the demons in the dark, you must join us. You want to be warriors? Look at these men. They were ordinary farmers 10 days ago. Now, at his signal, the 8 warriors stepped forward. They drew their wood-chopping blades. Their blood energy surged, coating the steel in a faint, crimson glow. Slash, they roared in unison. 8 blades cut through the air, creating a sharp whistling sound that made the villagers jump. All of them middle tier first rank. Qin Matsi whispered. The Qin villagers were in an uproar. In a world where monsters roamed the night, strength was the only currency that mattered. Everyone wanted to be a warrior. It was the only way to survive. And here was Li Yuming, offering them a shortcut to power. Qin Matsi looked at his bleeding hands, then at his people. The choice was becoming very clear. Chen Erga's eyes shifted from shock to a burning desire. He didn't just want safety. He wanted to advance, to break through his limits just like the men standing before him. The momentum was unstoppable. Only 5 days later, Chen Village officially merged into Li Village. To mark this new beginning, Li Yuming renamed the combined settlement Sihai Village. He chose the name Sihai, meaning 4 seas, to symbolize the idea that all rivers eventually flow into the great ocean. It was a bold move, but a necessary one. Li Yuming understood his role as my temple master perfectly. His job wasn't just to lead, it was to expand my flock. Keeping the old village name would have made the newcomers feel like outsiders, so he wiped the slate clean. Inside my divine realm, I watched the notification for my second personal mission flicker and turn green. A smile touched my lips. Li Yuming was proving to be more than just a loyal servant. He had real vision and balls. He hadn't just gained followers. He had swallowed a neighboring village whole. It had only been 22 days since I first established this realm, and 7 days since the merger. The progress was incredible. I looked at the reward that had materialized in front of me, the mountain leveling charm. I wondered if the name was literal. Could it really flatten a mountain and fill a sea? I checked the description. It was a rank 1 divine charm. Once activated, it could instantly level any peak under 300 feet and turn the land into fertile soil. I gasped. Even for a god of my current rank, that kind of power was terrifying. I was only a 9th rank Earth god. Normally, moving a mountain would be impossible for me. But here it was, a shortcut to absolute terraforming power. I looked out at the landscape surrounding Sihai Village. There weren't any massive, towering peaks nearby. Most of the hills were well under the 300-foot limit. I decided to tuck the charm away for now. Using it this early felt like a waste, and I didn't have enough followers yet to justify such a massive expansion of farmland. I wondered if any other players from Blue Star were selling these charms on the market. I checked the trading interface, but the listings were empty. It made sense. Most people were probably still struggling with the second mission. Over the last 17 days, my accumulated incense and faith had converted into 11 strands of divine power. Combined with my mission rewards, I now held 89 strands. My daily income had surged to 782 points of faith. At this rate, I was generating 2 new strands of power every 3 days. My strength was snowballing, but I knew I couldn't get complacent. I turned my attention to the 3rd personal mission. The description was a warning. My growing influence was starting to attract the wrong kind of attention. Specifically, the wolf demons of Mount Qianlang. The mission was clear: strike first. I had to eliminate the wolf demon on the mountain to protect my believers. The reward was tempting: a spirit field charm, 5 blessing charms, and 30 strands of divine power. I searched through the memories and prayers of my followers to gather intel. Mount Xianlang was the highest peak in this region, located about 10 miles north of the village. It was infested with wild wolves, led by a terrifying demon. Every 3 years, this beast would descend from the mountain and raid one of the 4 local villages. It wouldn't leave until it had devoured exactly 9 people. My original village had been lucky, avoiding the lottery of death for 9 years. Shen village hadn't been so fortunate. 3 years ago, the demon had taken 9 of their men. That was the real reason they had agreed to the merger so easily. They weren't just looking for a new name. They were looking for a god who could kill the monster they feared. I needed to know what I was up against. Based on what I knew of this world's power levels, an unranked wild god with enough power was roughly equivalent to a peak 2nd rank warrior. As a 9th rank earth god, my ceiling was the peak 4th rank. In this world, the 4th rank was known as the Yin-Yang realm. People called warriors at that level grandmasters. To men like Li Yuming, a grandmaster was a living legend. But I didn't know where a wolf demon sat on that scale. I decided to play it safe. I was a god now, and gods don't survive by being reckless. I opened the regional chat interface to see how the others were handling this. I didn't post anything. I just lurked. I knew someone would eventually get impatient and try to be a hero. Sure enough, after 3 days of scrolling through sand sculpture, memes, and complaints, a message caught my eye. "Listen up, brothers and sisters," the post began. "I know everyone is worried about the demon's strength in Mission 3. I'm going in. Most of us are at the 2nd rank peak in terms of raw power, and our temple masters are usually around the 1st rank. I've saved up 15 strands of divine power, which means I can fire off 15 golden blade spells. I've already ordered my temple master to lure the demon into the village. Wish me luck. I'm going to test the waters for everyone." I leaned back in my divine realm, watching the screen intently. 2 hours passed. I waited for the update, wondering if this pioneer was about to become a hero or a cautionary tale. The pioneer finally spoke up. He posted a photo as proof. It was a massive, tusked wild boar demon. "It's entering the village now," he messaged. "I'm going in. Wait for my news." I waited. 1 hour passed, then 2. My brow furrowed as I stared at the silent interface. There was nothing. No updates, no victory posts, just a void where his confidence used to be. I wondered if he had actually died. The regional chat was exploding with messages. Everyone was restless. "What happened to that guy?" one person asked. "I'm still waiting for the green light." Another added, "I'm at the same power level as him. If he can clear it, I'm sending my temple master to lure my target in immediately." As more time passed, the tone shifted to mourning. "He's definitely gone," someone posted. "This 3rd mission is too hard. I think we need to reach 9th rank before we can even touch it." Someone else joked about burning paper money for his soul, but another reminded them that in this world, there was no underworld yet. We were the gods here. I was about to close the chat and take a walk through Li Family Village. My territory had nearly doubled in size recently. I'd realized that when other small settlements merged into my village, the divine rules recognized it as an expansion of my domain. I wondered if I could just keep building new hamlets and merging them to expand my power indefinitely, but I doubted the system would let me exploit a loophole that easily. Suddenly, a notification flashed. "I'm back," it shouted. It was him. His profile picture was unmistakable. I didn't die, but I didn't finish the mission either. I sat up straight, focusing on his words. He broke down the encounter for everyone. The demon's strength was at the very peak of the 2nd rank, exactly matching our own power levels as unranked gods. "I fought that boar until the sky turned dark," he wrote. "I fired off 10 golden blade spells. I hacked its skin open and left it bleeding everywhere, but the damn thing was too tough. Even with heavy injuries, it managed to flee outside my jurisdiction. I wasted 10 strands of divine power for nothing." The chat erupted in frustration and facepalm emojis. People called him a failure for wasting so much energy, while others thanked him for being the crash test dummy. A peak 2nd rank demon. I narrowed my eyes. For most of the players from Earth, this was a massive wall. As unranked gods, our raw power was capped at that same level. Even though divine energy is naturally effective against demons, taking down a target with equal strength is never a guarantee. But I wasn't worried. I didn't even need to step out myself. My temple master, Li Yuming, could handle this. On paper, Li Yuming was only as strong as a mid-tier second-rank warrior. He couldn't beat a peak demon in a fair fight. However, as my temple master, he had access to a special ability, God Possession. If he called upon me, I could choose to respond. I could inhabit his body and cast my own divine arts through him. Even though the spells would only be at a third of my original strength and cost the same amount of divine power, a third of a 9th-rank god's power was more than enough to vaporize any second-rank demon. This was exactly why temple masters were so vital. They were our hands and feet in the mortal realm. I looked out toward the temple. Li Yuming was busy educating a group of new arrivals from a nearby settlement called Yuanshan Village. Well, it was more like brainwashing, but I preferred the term guidance. The 3-year cycle is almost up, Li Yuming's voice boomed, full of passion. The wolf demon of Qianling Mountain will descend soon to feast on human flesh. But you are villagers of Li family village now. We are protected by the great Lord Zhongyu. He paced in front of the crowd, his eyes glowing with conviction. As long as you are devout, as long as your incense never stops burning, no demon will ever touch you. Under the shadow of our Lord, this village is a forbidden zone for evil. The villagers were trembling, their faces flushed with hope and terror. In a world where entire towns were wiped off the map overnight, the promise of safety was the ultimate currency. They began to kneel, one after another, their faith pouring toward me like a rising tide. I watched them, feeling my power grow. The wolf was coming, but let it come. I was ready.